Greetings, this is Jan Spencer coming to you from Eugene, Oregon. I'd like to share with you some highlights from a new website, a primer for paradigmshift.org. Been working on this for a long time. First, what's a primer? A primer is a small book that describes new and unfamiliar ideas and concepts. And what do I mean by paradigm shift? Paradigm shift is the purposeful movement towards a society that takes care of its needs within the boundaries of the natural world, a society that places a high value on personal and social uplift and building civic culture. And that society would be served by an honest and responsible economic system. So this is a show and tell. What I'd like to do is call to your attention different parts of the primer and suggest that you come back at your own pace and take a closer look at the website. So first, let's do a screen share. This is This is what you see when you come to the website, a primer for paradigmshift.org. This is basically the contents of the website, aspects of paradigm shift, positive human potential, reduce eco footprints, prioritize time and money, be the change, paradigm shift to a wider audience, build civic culture, make common cause with allies and assets, paradigm shift, economics, permaculture, wisdom of the world's great spiritual traditions. So the primer goes into more detail on all of these aspects. So here is the home drop-down menu here. I just want to do a little quick view of the contents of the primer. These are the drop-down menus here, and this is what's underneath each drop-down menu. We'll take a closer look at sound bites in just a moment. We'll take a closer look at transforming my suburban property, a little closer look at some of the aspects of paradigm shift. We'll do a quick look at a critique of capitalism and the consumer culture. But most of the primer describes real life examples of paradigm shift. I just love these stories that come in just unimaginable variety of what people are doing in the real world, whether they identify with paradigm shift or not. That's what they're doing. One of the most important points to be made here in the primer is that we have a massive horizontal movement for paradigm shift that exists already. And when people realize that they're part of that movement, that's empowering. It's empowering to know that other people are working on the same ideal to bring about a society that we're capable of and that we deserve. And that society would be very different from what we have right now. So let's go back here and go to sound bites. Sound bites are essentially speed dating with the primer. So let's go to sound bites here. Here we go. So I just want to share with you just a few of these sound bites. These are just 1 and 2 sentence of rich content that have occurred to me doing all this writing and contemplating the idea of paradigm shift. Paradigm shift, a belief that our lives have meaning and purpose contributes greatly to the idea of paradigm shift. The consumer culture is brilliant at turning reasonable needs into oversized wants. Our society will not reach sustainability, peace, justice, and social uplift as long as capitalism and its consumer culture defines our society's values, goals, and way of life. Paradigm shift is not a utopia in the distant future. It's about common sense in the here and now. A significant amount of paradigm shift can manifest in our own lives and homes with families, friends, and neighbors as soon as we choose to prioritize our own time and money and take action. And again, we have a mass movement and waiting just ready to discover itself. So a lot of these thoughts, a lot of my thinking on paradigm shift has taken place transforming my own suburban property. I bought this place 25 years ago, and the intention from the start was to do a permaculture makeover. Uh, and the motives for that to reduce my own ecological footprint. That is an absolutely fundamental part of paradigm shift is not using so much stuff, reducing our ecological footprints, energy, resources. So these are just some pictures, an explanation of what I've done with my own suburban property. Uh, there are something like 50 million suburban homes in the United States. That's a lot of economic opportunity and a lot of social, personal, regional community transformation in the direction of paradigm shift. So another really important part of paradigm shift, what are values and ideals and principles that can bring people together? Well, one of the most important set of ideals and principles to me is the wisdom of the world's great spiritual traditions. And that's not to confuse that with the religion. Nearly every great religion all through history, regardless of geography or language spoken or what millennia that occurred, they share these common ideals. Almost every great spiritual tradition: care for the natural world, modesty of lifestyle, service to the community, uplift of the spirit, accountability for our actions. These ideals can bring a lot of people from a lot of different perspectives together. I would think almost everyone would value these kinds of ideals. These ideals can guide a civilization. These ideals can guide an economic system. And these are other supporting actions and ideals here. Reduce eco footprints, again, build civic culture, make common cause with allies and assets, purposeful time and money, permaculture, positive human potential. All of these elements support each other. Let's just take a little bit of a closer look at reducing eco footprints. That is the point of departure. How do we reduce our eco footprints? And the primer goes into more detail. This graphic shows historical carbon dioxide production. And of course, the United States leads the world. This is over the Industrial Revolution, human history going back maybe a couple hundred years. And these are all different countries, a comparison of carbon dioxide production, eco footprints. Look at the size of these. This map compares eco footprints for different parts of the world. And of course, the United States is pretty much leading the world in the amount of impact on the environment. So here is a suggested action people can take if they haven't done this already. The footprint calculator asks questions to the user about their lifestyle and provides at the end a figure how many planet Earths would it take for everybody to live like the person answering those questions. That is something of a point of departure for a paradigm shift, is to get a greater sense of our own lifestyle and how can we change our own lifestyles. And that is a footprint calculator is actually the name of that. So, um, and then another important aspect of paradigm shift is allies and assets. There are more allies and assets in our own communities than we realize. And again, this doesn't mean these allies and assets are proclaiming paradigm shift. They might not even be thinking paradigm shift, but again, their work is in the direction, purposeful change of society. That can be all kinds of civic groups, city programs, like Map Your Neighborhood, faith communities. So, of course, the primer goes into more detail about allies and assets. Economics, of course, that's the issue that is the driving force of paradigm shift is economics. We have an economic system that no question about it, it delivers the goods. The economic system has done a great deal to make our lives more convenient, more comfortable, um, but that comes at a very high price when we consider the many organizations, uh, progressive public interest groups that have their focus are different issues. They're working on social damage, public health, political, economic, environmental damage. What is the common denominator for almost all of these problems and damage? It's capitalism and consumer culture. It is overconsumption of energy and resources. That's the common denominator. And when we consider that we have millions and millions of jobs in our economy that exist to repair the damage caused by millions and millions of other jobs, that's not a healthy economic system. One of the main points from the primer is that if we address the issue of external costs, instead of spending literally hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars repairing damage, if we didn't create that damage in the first place, that money, those resources, that talent could be applied to paradigm shift. So this part of the primer just explains different aspects uh, and uh, deconstructs many of the mythologies of capitalism, such as economic efficiency, informed choice, the magic hand of the marketplace. These are all very shallow mythologies that we've been brought up with our entire lives. So the primer goes into more detail: disaster capitalism, social engineering. This is fascinating here. I describe briefly the history of social engineering and, of course, a um, Austrian moved to the United States in the late 1800s, Edward Bernays, the father of public relations. We essentially live in a society of social engineering. Produce the goods, keep the factories moving, keep the profits flowing in, and keep the wider public, the so-called masses, distracted so those of privilege and capacity, according to Lippmann and Bernays, they take care of business largely to add to their already existing fortunes. So I go into more detail here about the whole idea of social engineering. So the next part of the primer, uh, real life examples of paradigm shift. Of course, one of my favorite is Kailash Eco Village in Portland, Oregon. We'll just take a quick look here. These are inspiring stories. These are the ideals, the principles of paradigm shift applied to the real world. This isn't theory. Of course, I described a little bit of my own projects here on my quarter-acre suburban property. Kailash Eco Village is a substantial increase in scale of transformation. And paradigm shift, from my perspective, starts out as a grassroots movement, but the ideal is that over time, these small initiatives and projects connect with each other, they make common cause, and they increase the scale and the sophistication and the complexity of paradigm shift. We're not going to have paradigm shift with a few dozen suburban properties. Increasing the scale, Kailash Eco Village started out as a rundown, drug-infested apartment complex, and now it is just one of the best examples of paradigm shift I know of. For example, this beautiful garden here used to be a parking lot, and now back behind these trees, there's another apartment complex that is also in the early going of becoming another eco village just behind these trees. That one's called Annapurna. There are thousands of apartment complexes all over the country that could become eco villages. Uh, when you've visited uh, Kailash Eco Village and Annapurna, you're not going to look at uh, an apartment complex in the same way. I also like to call attention, being very interested in urban land use. How do we design our cities so that they're responsible, so that we take care of needs in a way that's not serving so much the economic system. It serves human needs rather than the needs of a growth-based economy that depends on externalizing the cost. What can some of these ideas look like in real life? Well, this is one of my favorite places. This is Barcelona, Spain, right here. I've spent a little bit of time in Barcelona. And what you see, okay, we have some kids kicking the soccer ball. We have some people uh, hanging out, talking with friends, reading a magazine, enjoying the shade of this quiet place. These are businesses down here on the ground floor. This is residential up above. So you say, okay, it's a park with a lot of pavement. Well, it is a park with a lot of pavement. This used to be a busy automobile intersection. Where these kids are right here used to be clogged with noisy cars and all their exhaust. This is the transformation going on in Barcelona. There are other places in Europe that I love as well that are a bit further along in the realm of uh, of urban transformation. than what we're used to here in the United States. Let me call attention to another example. These are allies and assets. These are examples of paradigm shift in the real world. Uh, Communications and media is an enormous set of allies and assets. How do we take the message of paradigm shift out to a wider audience? Uh, there are literally hundreds of radio stations around the country that are totally non-commercial radio with a lot of local programming as well. KEPW is here in Eugene, and as I mentioned, I'll have a new program on KEPW starting February the 10th. So these are places that deserve public support and participation as well. This is real life example of paradigm shift. Let's maybe take a look at another example of paradigm shift. This particular place is in Hood River, Oregon, and a teacher at a middle school is using permaculture to teach science to his kids. There's a waiting list for students who want to be in this class because it's so interesting. And part of the curriculum is gardening as well, but using permaculture as a teaching tool. Permaculture, of course, being a set of ideals and principles for taking care of human needs in ways that are friendly to people and planet. So this is Hood River Middle School. This is a great story. The primer goes into more detail. Let's take a look at one more. Of course, just up the road from me in Portland, Oregon, is City Repair. And I take these images mostly from their website. But City Repair is a nonprofit that's ideal is to reclaim public space for pedestrians. This doesn't mean the end of cars. It just means let's equalize our public spaces a little bit more to value people and places where people can meet. This being an intersection in Portland with a big painting in the street slows traffic down. It creates a place where people can come and make community. That's exactly what's happened. The term is placemaking. And again, City Repair also advocates a type of land use approach, sometimes called block planning. How can we reconfigure and redesign, retrofit our existing urban and suburban places to make them more ecologically and socially responsible? The primer goes into more detail. So another important part of the primer is be the change. Be the change means how can we participate, how can we learn, and how can we advocate paradigm shift in our own lives. And of course, this goes back to reducing our ecological footprints, building civic culture, engaging with our communities. That's be the change. This is almost like a primer within the primer. What assets and what interests do we have in our own lives that can be a part of paradigm shift? That's be the change. Be the change we want to see is the focus of this particular part of the primer. We go into more detail. So another drop-down menu, another part of the primer is how do we take these great ideas of paradigm shift to the wider world? One way we can do that is by showing what these great ideas look like in real life. Here in Eugene, we've been doing site tours for over 20 years. And that is we meet someplace and we go visit permaculture properties. We might visit a socially responsible, ecologically responsible business. We might visit a place like East Blair Housing Co-op here in Eugene. The co-op owns about 8 properties, and they can synchronize the use of those properties to make best use of those properties for the members of the co-op. About 50 people live at East Blair. So this is a site tour of East Blair right here. This image here, we talk about allies and assets. We had the 2015 Northwest Permaculture Convergence here in my neighborhood, based at our neighborhood recreation center. And part of the convergence, we did site tours in the neighborhood to see what different properties are doing to reduce eco footprints, produce more basic needs closer to home. So there were 70, 80 people on this bike ride. This is one of the locations we visited, Dharmalaya, about 2 blocks away from where I live, a learning center. Uh, we visited these different places again to see what paradigm shift can look like. That is just so important to show what theory looks like when it's turned into real action. And another part of taking the ideas of paradigm shift to the wider world, when we consider that virtually every public interest organization that addresses social issues, environmental issues, affordable housing, equity, public health, they almost all exist to repair some kind of damage caused by overconsumption and the consumer culture. They're on the same team. So that means that we have an enormous common denominator. We have a shared purpose to create alternatives to the system that is causing these problems. Of course, again, that is the consumer culture. Uh, this horizontal movement is vast in its expanse. It can include Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, Defend the Sacred, but it also includes very mainstream entities like the League of Women Voters, the Sierra Club, the American Association of Retired Persons. The ideal here with taking paradigm shift ideas out to the wider world is that if these entities can take these kinds of stories in their newsletters, in their magazines, in their agendas. Imagine if the American Association for Retired Persons was explaining urban land use in terms of history, in terms of how the economic system that's focused on externalizing its cost and making as much money as possible is responsible for the problems that the AARP is encouraging its members to address the 10 to 15-minute neighborhood, healthy lifestyles, uh, designing our urban places so they're less dependent on fossil fuels. The AARP already advocates healthy food choices and smart urban design, but what if they could take their explanation a little bit deeper to go into the history of why we have these problems in the first place? And then if the AARP could include stories about transforming a suburban property or city repair types of ideas, if these entities could be more explicit in explaining where the problems come from and then describe what's happening all over the country to address these problems. Uh, Imagine 35 million people hearing the stories about reducing ecological footprints and that we have junk food because it's more profitable than healthy food. This is an enormous part of taking paradigm shift to the wider world. I also describe why faith communities and even MAGA, Make America Great Again, organized labor paradigm shift could and should be an important part of their agendas as well. Think of labor explaining to its members uh, the basic uh, motivations of our economic system are at odds with working people. So that's just a little brief look at the wider world. So let's go back to the home. Um, I've just touched on only a few of the highlights of a primer for paradigm shift. The aspects of paradigm shift go into more detail with all of these. So that is what I wanted to show and tell. I just encourage you to come back to the primer, a primer for paradigm shift.org and take a closer look. And if you're involved with some type of initiative or project that is a part of paradigm shift, I encourage you to contact me through the website uh, and tell me what it is that this project is. We might end up including that project here on real life examples of paradigm shift. I also welcome opportunities to speak at events, conferences, symposia. So if you're involved with a program committee, you're also welcome to contact me. I'd love to share these ideas. Zoom can do that from anywhere in the country. So that's what I have. I appreciate your attention. Again, this is Jan Spencer coming to you from Eugene, Oregon. Thanks.